Imagine living your whole life not knowing who you really are and never having the opportunity to find out. This is the haunting case of Suzanne Marie Savakis, a young woman known by many names, but whose true identity was buried under lies, control, and abuse. It's April 1990 near Oklahoma City, and three men are driving down a quiet road when they come across some debris. It's a young woman severely injured, groceries scattered beside her, no ID, no answers, just silence. The men decide to call for an ambulance, and this woman is barely clinging to life at this point. They get to the hospital, and a much older man named Clarence Hughes arrives, claiming to be her husband and the father of her 2-year-old child. Doctors and nurses were baffled at this point because her injuries were not consistent with a hit and run or a roadside injury. There were old bruises, so suspicion is already starting to grow at this point. The young woman named Tanya Hughes would eventually succumb to her injuries, and unfortunately she did pass away in the hospital days later. Tanya was a dancer at a local club, and her coworkers described her as a loving and wonderful mom, but did notice some disturbing signs, like her and her 2-year-old son Michael were not allowed to be alone together. They couldn't go to the zoo without Clarence being in the presence of the two of them. Her coworkers wanted to notify her family of her passing, so when they tried to call her supposed mother, she said, "That's not possible. My daughter passed away 20 years ago at just 18 months old." There were some odd signs with Michael, like he was not speaking, and eventually he was placed into foster care. And the man who called himself Clarence Hughes, his supposed father, kept fighting for custody of his 2-year-old son. While Clarence Hughes is trying to gain back custody, they call Michael in for a paternity test where it is discovered that Clarence Hughes is in fact not the biological father, and all parental rights are taken away. No visits, nothing. Michael had been with his foster family for about 4 years at this point, and on all accounts and in everything I've read, they absolutely adored him and were actually almost through the adoption process when the unspeakable happens. And you might have guessed it, Clarence Hughes strikes again. Clarence Hughes, on September 12, 1994, would enter Michael's school, hold his principal at Pew Pew Point, walk into the classroom, and kidnap poor baby Michael. Holding the principal and Michael at Pew Pew Point, he forced the principal to drive Michael and himself down to an isolated dirt road where he would force the principal to get out and tie him to a tree, handcuff him, and duct tape his face and mouth. And this is the beginning of the end for Clarence Hughes, because this is when authorities do a deep dive into his past. Boy oh boy, is there a lot in it. They found that in 1990 he had tried to pull Tanya's life insurance policy before her death, and when they looked into the social security number that tried to pull it, the name was not registered to Clarence Hughes, but to Franklin Delano Floyd. Taking a deeper dive into his criminal history, let's see, he abducted a girl in 1962. In 1963, had robbed a bank and was released into a halfway house in 1972, meaning he had been in prison for the last 10 years. When he attacked a girl in 1973, which he was arrested for again, posted bail, I don't know how they gave him a bail option, went on the run, and then did not appear in trials. So he had been on the run and missing for 17 years. The FBI then releases a picture of Tanya and Michael, and it is plastered everywhere on the news, and this is when the story starts to all come together into the name, the girl in the picture. Then the call comes in. A woman from high school recognizes Tanya Hughes, but by the name of Sharon Marshall. Sharon Marshall, as her friends in high school knew her, was brilliant. She was in the honors programs, she was in ROTC, she was slated to get a full ride to Georgia Tech to join the aerospace engineering program. She had a super bright future painted for her. Behind the scenes, her friends painted a completely different picture of her life. Her father was assaulting her and grooming her, and her friends had been horrified for her throughout high school. Her best friend in high school said that she got a call one day that Tanya, aka Sharon at this point, was pregnant and that they were going to leave and she was going to raise the baby, and her father would not let her go to Georgia Tech. And you'll never guess who her father was. Clarence Hughes, aka Warren Marshall. Still going by Sharon and Warren Marshall at this point, the pair are next seen in Tampa, and Sharon now begins her career as an exotic dancer under her father's control. This is when Cheryl Comesso comes into the scene. She's one of Sharon's best friends in Tampa and also a co-worker. Clarence Hughes, aka Warren Marshall, gained an obsession with Cheryl Comesso and even recorded Cheryl Comesso and his daughter, Sharon Warren at the time, nude on the beach. One day, out of the blue, Sharon and Warren Marshall had disappeared yet again. The timeline up to this point is that Sharon and Warren Marshall had lived in Georgia as father and daughter, and then moved to Tampa while she was pregnant with baby Michael as father and daughter as well, and then moved to Oklahoma City, disappearing overnight from Florida, and changing their names to Clarence and Tanya Hughes, where they would later be married. So now they're looking for ways to locate Clarence Hughes / Warren Marshall / Frankham Floyd, right? And they're able to get a hit off of his driver's license in Kentucky under the name of Warren Marshall. Authorities were able to locate and arrest him when he renewed his driver's license, and they were able to charge him with kidnapping, carjacking, as well as using a firearm during the kidnapping, but there was no baby Michael to be found. Clarence Hughes claimed that he had dropped baby Michael off with a rich family and they took him in. Once they had him in custody, they were obviously able to start digging into his past more and questioning him, but they also had access to his truck, and they found pictures of abuse taped to the bottom. Not only was there proof of Sharon's abuse, but there was another woman in these images. A highway crew in Florida would later find a body on the side of the highway with 2 pew-pew wounds to the back of the head, and you'll never guess who it was. Cheryl Comesso. Cheryl Comesso's body was found in 1995, 6 years after her disappearance. I mentioned earlier that he had had an obsession with Cheryl Comesso, and they were able to identify her due to the shirt she was wearing when she was found deceased, and a shirt in one of the images found under his truck. This is the assumed reason that Sharon and Warren up and fled from Tampa, Florida to Oklahoma City the day after Cheryl Comesso went missing. He was finally done for. They had him, since they were able to connect the shirt found with her body and with the pictures found under his truck. He was found guilty of first-degree unaliving, and he was given the death penalty. A man decided to write a book on this case, and in 2005, finally, a tip would come through, and you'll never guess from who. Sharon had a daughter who was alive and well and had been given up for adoption at the hospital at birth. While looking into this case and trying to piece together the timeline, they also find out that Clarence, aka Warren, aka Floyd, was not Sharon's biological father. It wouldn't have been possible, as he was in prison for 10 years during the time of her birth. So now comes the question, who is Sharon Marshall? Who is Tanya Hughes? Who is she? Where did she come from? If that's not her biological father, how? So the FBI decides to interview him one more time, and they finally get him to crack. He claims that while he was a bus driver in Livonia, Michigan, he meets a woman named Sandy who had just lost custody of her 3 daughters, and he claims he's going to marry her and help her get them back. He also had a different name during this time, which was Brandon Cleo Williams. So he's got, what, 4 names at this point? Sandy and Brandon, at this point, get custody of the 3 daughters back. They finally get Sharon Marshall, aka Tanya Hughes' real identity, which is Suzanne Marie Savakis. And get this, her birth parents were still alive. Once Sandy got custody back of her 3 daughters, she went out to buy them diapers and gave the cashier a bad check. So she was sent to prison for 30 days, and that's when he took all 3 of her children. She came back to no family, no one. Floyd did eventually confess that he had also pew-pewed Michael in the back of the head 2 times, and they were never able to recover the poor little boy's remains. Suzanne never got to know that she was Suzanne. He basically erased any of her past and made her his daughter, abused her, and then married her. This case is so especially sad because it took 3 people's futures. Poor baby Michael never had the chance to know his loving mother, to have the foster family that wanted him. For no reason, an innocent life was taken. And for Suzanne, she never even knew she was Suzanne. She had a bright future. She was going to be an aerospace engineer, a mother, a daughter, but her life was stolen from her not once, but numerous times. And Cheryl Comesso, who was just trying to be a friend. This case takes about 50 different turns, so if you have questions, I'll try my best to answer them, and let me know your thoughts on this case. Thanks for listening. Rest in peace to Suzanne Marie Savakis, Michael, and Cheryl.